Hello everyone, Morgan Hibbs here with Lynn County Farm Bureau. I'm so excited to be joining you virtually for another Ag in the Classroom lesson. Today we are going to learn about biodiversity and ecosystems and why biodiversity is important to agriculture. So what is biodiversity? Well, biodiversity is a difference between plants and animals that make those plants and animals unique. It's important that we have a variety of animals and plants in our ecosystem to help continue that food chain. That food chain is important because of producers, consumers, and decomposers. So the food chain and the ecosystem as a whole is made up of those three different things: the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. What is a producer? A producer is a plant or a species that makes its own food, usually through photosynthesis. A consumer is all types of animals that rely on other plants and animals to provide them with energy. So for example, we are consumers. We eat both plants and animals. We also have decomposers. Decomposers are types of fungi and bacteria that like to feed on dead plants and animals, decomposing materials. Now, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a system made up of living and non-living things. Living things would be our plants, animals, bacteria, microorganisms, fungi. The non-living things would include the sunshine, the rain, the wind, the soil, minerals, rocks. Those would all be considered non-living things. Now, ecosystems work because of that biodiversity, because of the difference in the uniqueness of our plants and animals, of our living things in our ecosystem. We have a food chain made up of those producers, consumers, and decomposers. And when one of those is missing, that food chain has a gap. So it's important that we are protecting the biodiversity of our ecosystems. Now we have both natural and managed ecosystems. Natural ecosystems are those in the wild, the environment. The natural ecosystems are when you go out to a field and you have wildlife like deer and raccoons, skunks, maybe you have mice running around. That is a natural ecosystem. They are in the wild, in the environment. We also have insects in that natural ecosystem. Plants. We have plants and vegetation and weeds that grow up in that natural ecosystem. Now, a managed ecosystem is when we have farming. Farming is a type of managed ecosystem where we are planting the seeds, we are controlling that environment. We are planting the seeds, caring for those plants. Also, livestock farming, having cows and pigs and chickens and sheep, that is also a managed ecosystem. There are both plants and animals in that managed ecosystem, but they are controlled by people so that we are able to produce enough food to feed all of our population. So we have signs here. This one says natural and managed. We have two definitions: existing in or caused by nature, not made or caused by humankind. So this would be our natural ecosystem definition. And managed is to take charge or care of. So we are managing that ecosystem. Now I would like you to do a icebreaker activity to get you excited about this topic. There are four corners hopefully in your room, and I would like you to label those four corners as natural, managed, both, or neither. And we have cards here that have statements on them. And you can pass these out so that each student has a couple, or you can read them aloud as the teacher, and all the students can go to which corner they believe the statement fits. I'd like you to pause this video and go ahead and do this activity now. And if the teachers, you have an answer key in your kit if you would like to double check the answers for the students. But once you've done this activity, I would like you to come back and resume play. Why is this important? Why is it important and key to have biodiversity in our ecosystems? Well, if one of those parts of the ecosystem is missing, it's going to disrupt the whole food chain and our whole cycle here within our ecosystems. For example, if we plant a corn in a field and we plant corn, we are not going to have biodiversity in that soil. There are certain bugs and insects and diseases and weeds that are more attracted to that corn plant. That's going to increase those populations, and it's going to decrease the populations of what would be maybe there if it was a soybean plant every other year. So many farmers crop rotate between corn and soybeans. For example, soybeans fixate nitrogen. So plants need nitrogen to grow. Nitrogen helps to help with photosynthesis. It helps with chlorophyll, the green pigment of the plant. It helps with reproduction, with reading DNA and RNA. Nitrogen is very important to plants. Well, nitrogen naturally in the environment is not readily available for plants to use. So we have to give the plants the nitrogen in a form that it can use. And there are 3 different ways that can happen. Through bacteria. Bacteria can fixate the nitrogen to a form that plants can use. Actually, lightning can also fixate nitrogen, which is pretty cool. And the third way that we can fixate nitrogen is by adding it to the fertilizer, or into the fields as fertilizer. But what's really neat is I mentioned the bacteria. Soybean plants have nodules on their roots that have bacteria that fixate nitrogen. So by having a soybean plant this year, corn next year, corn's a larger plant. It's going to use more nitrogen. That soybean is going to make nitrogen readily available for plants, but not use it all. If we plant corn the next year, it's going to be able to use that nitrogen that soybean plant made or produced. So that's really neat because the soybean is helping the corn plant. That's biodiversity. We want to increase the diversity and the uniqueness of our ecosystems. It's a little bit more difficult in a managed system to have that biodiversity. So one way that farmers can do this is by increasing the biodiversity on their particular farm, by doing that crop rotation, but also by planting new seeds. So we can try different types of plants. For example, a farmer here in Linn County traditionally grows corn and soybeans, but throughout the last couple years, he's been trying new things. Last year, he planted chickpeas and flax. This year, I think he was going to try maybe growing one other seed and see how it works. What's neat is he can actually plant those seeds together. He can plant the flax and the chickpeas together because they grow well together. We also have farmers who are every 3 years putting their fields into hay production. So that's also adding a crop rotation into their schedule. So they might do corn, soybeans, hay. Corn, soybeans, hay. That's going to also increase the biodiversity. Many farmers are planting cover crops in the fall that is to help control erosion and to provide nutrients for the plants because it stores the nutrients in the soil throughout the winter months. That is adding one more crop to that soil, so it's increasing that biodiversity because there's new insects and bacteria and microorganisms in the soil that's going to be increased. Seeds play a large role in biodiversity, but we can also increase biodiversity with animals and livestock. It's important to conserve our natural ecosystems. So by not tearing down too many forests, or by not maybe instead of having a field all the way to the road, having a strip of prairie grasses and pollinator flowers. By keeping areas, there's a type of government program called CRP, which is where farmers will keep a field out of production and keep it as a natural habitat, like prairie grasses, pollinator flowers, trees, and this is to encourage wildlife and pollinators to make their habitats in this area. And it's usually areas that are not going to be good cropland because they're highly erodible. So these are just a few ways that farmers are starting to increase the biodiversity on their farm while still maintaining a profitable business and being sustainable for their farm, and making sure that we are protecting our ecosystems and natural environments. Now, there's a lot more that we could be doing, and we're moving in that right direction. And you can help with this. You can recycle, not pollute or throw out trash. Use less waste, so not use plastic water bottles, use a reusable one. Take your sandwich in a washable container instead of a Ziploc bag. So there's things that you can do as well to help to protect our environment. Okay, so today's activity, we have a seed identification worksheet. So I mentioned that seeds are very important to biodiversity. And there is a story called The Story of Seeds. In this book, if you, as the teacher, are interested in purchasing this book from Amazon, it's a great book for middle school age students, and it's really interesting. It talks about the story of seeds, protecting the purity of seeds, so making sure that we have seed banks around the world, because what happens if we no longer can produce potatoes, or we can no longer produce corn because the seeds are not pure and we don't have different varieties of those seeds. And if a disease takes over one type of plant, that could be lost. And so this book talks about seed banks and the importance of protecting the purity of our seeds, having different varieties of seeds, so not having just one type of corn, but talking about the importance of that biodiversity. Okay, with our activity, we have the seed identification sheet, and you have this seed identification worksheet on the website or available in your kit, but this is an activity where the students are going to investigate the difference between those seeds. So you are going to get 6 seeds, and you have a small box here where I'd like you to draw a picture of your seed, write down the description of that seed, and take a guess of what kind of seed it is. So try to identify that seed. Some of them are going to be very obvious, like maybe sunflower seeds. That might be obvious. Most of us have seen sunflower seeds before, but some of them might not be as obvious to you. For example, we have chickpea seeds in here, marigold seeds. So I'd like you to try to identify the seed and write a description of what that seed looks like. There's a couple things, one question too up here that asks you to explain the importance of biodiversity. To continue your learning, you can also do a additional activity where if you would like to take some seeds and create a letter. So this is our intern page. The first letter of her name, she glued seeds to here, and then you can ask your students to label them, so that way it kind of is just an extension of this activity. Label that seed, kind of make a poster or a seed identification with your name, which is just kind of fun and an extra just an activity to continue your learning. I'm going to read you just a couple pages from this story in case you don't have a chance to purchase this book. So the first page I'm going to read you is called Seeds at Risk. You spit out a watermelon seed onto your plate, wishing your slice was seedless. You flick the black dots into the trash before loading the dishwasher. They're garbage, right? But what if your sweet slice were from the very last watermelon in the world? Would you still spit out the seeds into the trash? Or would you risk your life to save each one? Fortunately, you don't have to make that choice, and watermelons are not crucial to our survival, not even on a hot day. But what if it weren't watermelons that were threatened? What if it was one of our priority crops, like wheat, corn, rice, or potatoes? What if we were facing a great famine, like they did in Ireland? Now the stakes would be higher. Would you face danger to save any of those seeds? Were you in the midst of a seed crisis? We are in the midst of a seed crisis. Every day, new headlines jump out at us. Seeds are facing many threats, and when they are threatened, our food supply is also at risk. It may sound crazy, even improbable, but there are scientists who are risking their lives every day for seeds. Thank you everyone for participating in our virtual Ag in the Classroom lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning about seeds and the importance of biodiversity.